if there were ever any doubt that President Obama was keenly aware of the political maelstrom surrounding him, there is this extraordinary Rolling Stone interview. January 27, 2009, only a week after his inauguration, the president was on his way to a meeting with Republicans to present and gather ideas on the stimulus bill. Quoting him, and on the way over, the caucus, that is the Republican caucus, essentially released a statement that said, we're going to vote no as a caucus. And this was before we'd even had the conversation. At that point, we realized that we weren't going to get the kind of cooperation we'd anticipated. The strategy the Republicans were going to pursue is one of sitting on the sidelines, trying to gum up the works based on the assumption that given the scope and size of the recovery, the economy probably wouldn't be very good even in 2010, and that they were better off being able to assign the blame to us than work with us to try to solve the problem. As for the communications and oft-time fundraising arm of the GOP, Fox News, the president seemed to be under no illusion about its effect. It is part of the tradition that has a very clear, undeniable point of view. It's a point of view that I disagree with. It's a point of view that I think is ultimately self-destructive for the long-term growth of a country. The president also said that the Tea Party was a mixed bag of different strains in American politics, including libertarians and social conservatives, but he was clear that moneyed interests underpinned much of the movement. Quoting again, there's no doubt that the infrastructure and the financing of the Tea Party come from some very traditional, very powerful special interest lobbies. I don't think this is a secret, the president said. Dick Armey and Freedom Works, which was one of the first organizational mechanisms to bring Tea Party folks together, are financed by very conservative industries and forces. Forces, the president added, that are against environmental laws and clean energy policy, as well as regulations to protect workers and rein in the financial industry. Let's turn to the magazine, the Washington bureau chief of Mother Jones Magazine, columnist for PoliticsDaily.com, David Korn. David, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
I need to preface what I'm going to say here with something that the Deputy Press Secretary, Mr. Burton, said in a gaggle aboard Air Force One this afternoon about whether or not the president feels appreciated. Let me quote Mr. Burton directly. What the president is doing is making sure that people know, whether you're on the left or on the right, that we've done a lot, we've got a lot more to do, and if you're on the left, if you're somebody like Keith Olbermann or Rachel Maddow or one of the folks who helps to keep our government honest and pushes and prods to make sure that folks are true to progressive values, then he thinks that those folks provide an invaluable service. I want to thank Mr. Burton for his kind words and the president for his, and I want to sort of rise to this bar, I hope, by asking you this. If on the 8th day of his administration the president knew the GOP was just anti-everything, why ever since has he been negotiating with them as if he could ever get a yes from them?
I think it's because the president doesn't watch zombie movies. I mean, you can't negotiate with zombies. You can't trust zombies. And he continued after that point. I mean, I read the Rolling Stone interview today, and that was a very striking acknowledgement on his part, because after getting that big no from them on stimulus spending, he ran into it again and again on the energy front, on health care, on Wall Street reform, and each time he was, he spent a lot of effort and a lot of political capital trying to work with the zombie party, and he kept hitting his head against the same wall. Maybe if he had come to that conclusion earlier, things would look a little bit different today.
These zombies, though, don't eat brains, clearly. You know this. This president, more than any probably we've seen in a long time, really takes seriously the idea that he's the president of the people who didn't vote for him. So we can understand that pressure working against whatever his instincts might have been on January 27, 2009. But all those things that you brought up, public option, climate legislation, immigration, even more jobs bills, things that didn't happen, they can now be seen within the sort of the rubric of the certain political calculations. Is it supposed to make it more palatable or more bearable to the disappointed out here?
I don't think the problem is that the president compromised. Sometimes that is necessary down here in Washington to get something through. I think the problem was the way he went about doing it. You can compromise and still win and define your own narrative. That's a very popular word here amongst pundits, narrative. By which the stimulus is a good example. We all know now that it probably should have been twice as big as it was. Now, that probably wouldn't have passed through the Senate with all our Republican obstructionist pals there. So the president, though, could have said at the time, listen, we need a bigger stimulus. I will take what they give me, but I tell you, it's not going to be good enough. And that way, when unemployment, is at 9.6 rather than at 7.6, he has an argument to be made, which is, I told you we needed to do more, and the Republicans prevented us from doing that. But instead, at the time, he did all the compromising. He won over 3 or 4 Republicans, whatever the number was, and he said, this bill is great. And that put him in a jam because the unemployment went up to 9.6, and it gave Republicans the opportunity to say, see, we spent all that money and unemployment still is high. So he lost the story part of this, and it sounds kind of trite and immature, but if you're going to be a leader, you have to lead not just in passing and governance, but in telling people what's going on and keeping your side together and activated and winning over independents to your arguments.
Which raises an interesting question as to what he does if there is a zombie party house in the months to come. But there's a last point. You have to address this. The president did not go so far as to address the issue of Fox News the way we do by calling them Fox PAC. But he does seem to know now, or it's evident that he's admitting to the fact that he knows what he's up against with that outfit.
Well, yeah, he took that stab at Fox. And you remember a year ago or so, the White House started a campaign against Fox and then dropped it. I think the way they should regard Fox News is with strategic derision. Now, I don't mean they should go out there every day and say worst person in the world, because you do that pretty well yourself.
Thank you.
But I think that you have to sort of undercut it, undermine it, and just say, oh, yeah, that's just Fox being Fox. Let the Keith Olbermanns of the world do the trench warfare, Media Matters pound away, and just, you know, the president is bigger than Fox News. He's bigger than cable. I hate to say that on cable. And, you know, he shouldn't be shooting down. He's not going to change them. That's a rarefied, bizarro, alternative world that Fox serves, and I think the best way to deal with it is to sort of try to, you know, laugh at it to a certain degree and just not take it all that seriously, because it's not a serious network.
I hope in fact, I hope the smallest president we've ever had is bigger than cable. Goodness. Mother Jones' Washington bureau chief David Corn, many thanks.
Thank you, Keith.